Should I do like this?
Assalamu alaikum. It's on. Assalamu alaikum. There's a little conference going on here. Assalamu alaikum. Yeah, we're ready to start. So brothers can sit here. The sisters, you can sit on my left hand side. We're gonna start in 5 minutes with the recitation of the Quran by Brother Umar. Assalamu alaikum. There are a lot of kids running around. Fatima, the parents, if you could keep your kids with you, especially when the Quran is being recited, that would be wonderful. Inshallah.
Surah Fatiha. Bismillah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وعباد الرحمن الذين يمشون على الأرض هونا وإذا خاطبهم الجاهلون قالوا سلاما والذين يبيتون لربهم سجدا وقياما والذين يقولون ربنا اصرف عنا عذاب جهنم إن عذابها كان غراما إنها ساءت مستقرا ومقاما والذين إذا أنفقوا لم يسرفوا ولم يقتروا وكان بين ذلك قواما والذين لا يدعون مع الله إلها آخر ولا يقتلون النفس التي حرم الله إلا بالحق ولا يزنون ومن يفعل ذلك يلقى أثاما يضاعف له العذاب يوم القيامة ويخلد فيه مهانا إلا من تاب وآمن وعمل عملا صالحا فأولئك يبدل الله سيئاتهم حسنات وكان الله غفورا رحيما ومن تاب وعمل صالحا فإنه يتوب إلى الله متابا والذين لا يشهدون الزور وإذا مروا باللغو مروا كراما والذين إذا ذكروا بآيات ربهم لم يخروا عليها صما وعميانا والذين يقولون ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين وجعلنا للمتقين إماما أولئك يجزون الغرفة بما صبروا ويلقون فيها تحية وسلاما خالدين فيها حسنت مستقرا ومقاما حسنت مستقرا ومقاما قل ما يعبأ بكم ربي لولا دعاؤكم فقد كذبتم فسوف يكون لزاما صدق الله العظيم.
At-takbir. So the reason why I didn't stop him, because he started off, and I didn't want to stop him in regards to the people of Jahannam. So I had to let him take us to Jannah. So I asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to meet in Jannah, just like how we meet in this masjid every Friday. Jazakumullah khair.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. So inshallah, in kind of keeping with the theme of what we've been talking about for all of these weeks, this subject that has not left anyone's mind, given that the state of the suffering of our brothers and sisters in Gaza, in Palestine, and really all over the Muslim world, is in a situation where the Muslimin are really suffering. And so it begs the question, or people are thinking, when will the situation change? When will the situation change? What will it take to get to a different level? What will it take for the people of Palestine to stop suffering? What will it take for the people of Burma to stop suffering? For the people of Sudan to stop suffering? For the people in Eastern China to stop suffering? For the people in Kashmir to stop suffering? There's a lot of suffering all over the world. So a person must think, given the environment and the context that we're in, we are conditioned to look at the world in a certain way, and that way that we're conditioned to looking at the world is at odds, and it conflicts with the Muslim worldview. And I know we've spoken a little bit about the Muslim worldview in the past, but this is something that I really want to emphasize, that the lens of the believer is profoundly different from that of someone who doesn't believe in Allah. That you have the ability to look at the same exact things as the people next to you, but you are looking at them completely differently. It's as though they have one prescription for their lenses and you have a completely different prescription for your lenses. And they're wondering why things are so difficult, and you could be looking at the same exact situation and really see, there's something there that you don't see. There's something there that you don't quite realize. So part of Iman and the gift of Iman is the clarity that we have in looking at all of the events around us and being able to put things in their proper place. Being able to put everything in its proper place. From the first things that our worldview gives to us in looking at the world around us and the suffering around us and this question of the victory of Allah and the help of Allah, the first thing that comes to mind that's part of the Muslim worldview, front of mind when we're looking at all of these things, is that the one who runs the universe is Allah. The one who runs the universe is Allah. This is the foremost part of our worldview. That Allah Azza wa Jal is the one who created the entirety of the heavens and the earth, and there is not a single thing that exists except that it is entirely dependent of Allah. No amount of foreign aid will help you against Allah. No amount of nations that ally with you or against you will make a difference if Allah Azza wa Jal is against you. the one who is truly in control is Allah. So part of the Muslim worldview, when you're looking at all of the things that are suffering, and you keep front of mind, Allah Azza wa Jal has every single thing in control. And if that is the case, then when there is suffering, then it is for a wisdom. When there is defeat, then it is for a wisdom. When there is calamity, it is for a wisdom. When there is any kind of hardship, it is for a wisdom that Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. So this is the number one thing about the Muslim worldview that's important about how we look at the world around us and how we look at the suffering around us. Another component of the worldview that comes to mind during this time and how we cope is that it reminds us of who we are at our core. Who we are at our core. Our worldview, a component of your worldview is who you are as a person. What is the nature of you as a human being? The Muslim worldview is that we are more than just material. We are a soul. And at the heart of our identity as creation is that we are the abd of Allah. We are the servant of Allah. So that means when we see calamity come our way, we can never have this kind of entitled position saying, why did this happen to me? Rather, the Islamic worldview is, I am the abd of Allah. Allah does to me whatever He sees fit. So whatever happens to me, it is a reminder that I'm not the one in control, and that I understand my role in this world. My role in this world is the abd of Allah. So when calamity falls upon me, Allah does with me whatever He wishes. And part of discontentment or frustration when certain bad things happen to us in certain scenarios, that discontentment comes from a sense of entitlement. I deserved this, why didn't I get it? So calamity, or one of the wisdoms in calamity, is that reminder that don't think that you are entitled to anything. Allah Azza wa Jal can deprive you of certain things. And that deprivation is a reminder of who Allah is and who you are in the grand scheme of the universe. Another component of the Islamic worldview that helps us look at the world around us with clarity is this understanding that we are more, or all of existence is more than just this realm of the seen world. When you are looking at the calamity that goes around you, you realize that there is a component of this that is from the ghaib, from the unseen. You don't know how the support of Allah is coming. Allah Azza wa Jal could be supporting the believers in ways that are completely unperceivable to us. There is Allah Azza wa Jal writing the deeds down, the angels writing the deeds down for those who are patient during this time. There's Allah Azza wa Jal supporting people in ways that are unbeknownst to us. So the Muslim understands that there is more to this world than just what we see now. That even though there is suffering, there is the forgiveness of sins. Even though there is suffering, in patience there is reward. All of these elements are ones that enable the Muslim to look with clarity, with resolve, with patience at the world around us, and not become completely destroyed in the face of calamity. Because we understand there are components of this world that we will not understand. But Allah Azza wa Jal, in His full control, is handling things accordingly. Another component of the Islamic worldview that enables us to look at calamity properly is the fact that we believe in an afterlife. We believe in an afterlife. That we will not become in utter despair when we see some of the incredible suffering that is going on right now. Because we understand that Allah Azza wa Jal has prepared such an incredible reward for certain people in the hereafter. And likewise, for those people who you see right now at the top, where it seems at times as though they could never be toppled, Allah Azza wa Jal will set the record straight. وَمَا كَانَ رَبُّكَ نَسِيًّا. Allah Azza wa Jal, your Lord, your Master, does not ever forget. So in this, we have this understanding that those people who are unjust in this world, those people who are tyrants in this world, who take advantage of this of the weak and the poor, those people who it seems like their bloodlust is never satiated, don't worry. There is something that is coming to them. Justice will be served to these people. And likewise, when we see all of the suffering of the believers, we understand that, subhanAllah, inshallah, Allah Azza wa Jal is preparing an incredible reward. A reward which will make them forget all kinds of hardship that they experienced in this world. We have the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, where he mentions that the most privileged person in this world, who had the best life in this world, the best life, will be just dipped into the hellfire. And he will say, after being dipped into the fire and after having a lifetime of luxuries and enjoyment, after just an exposure, a brief exposure to the hellfire, he will say, I have never seen goodness ever in my life. I have never seen goodness ever in my life. And likewise, the person who has gone through incredible difficulty, who has gone through incredible hardship in this world, as though the entirety of their life is just one chapter of sorrow followed by a chapter of misery, despair, loss, you name it. And then Allah will dip them into the paradise. Allah will dip them into the paradise. And what will they say? مَا رَأَيْتُ بُؤْسًا قَطْ. I've never seen any kind of despair. I've never seen any kind of difficulty in my life. The people who have had the most difficult lives. So understand this grounding in the belief of the hereafter, and this grounding in the mercy of Allah and the infinite justice of Allah and the power of Allah is one that gives us a foundation to never despair. It gives us a proper foundation to look at all of the world around us with a sense of clarity that allows us to know that Allah's plan is always supreme. Allah's plan will always be the one that is realized. And the last component I wanted to speak about with regards to how our Islamic worldview allows us to put things in their proper place is that it gives us a different perception of time. It gives us a different perception of time. Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, أَمْ حَسِبْتُمْ أَن تَدْخُلُوا الْجَنَّةَ وَلَمَّا يَأْتِكُمْ مَثَلُ الَّذِينَ خَلَوْا مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ. Do you think that you were going to enter paradise, but the example of those previous people has not befallen upon you? That what happened to them will not happen to you? And then Allah gives some examples. مَسَّتْهُمُ الْبَأْسَاءُ وَالضَّرَّاءُ. Suffering and hardship befell upon them. مَسَّتْهُمُ الْبَأْسَاءُ وَالضَّرَّاءُ وَزُلْزِلُوا. وَزُلْزِلُوا. They were shaken. Imagine the foundation beneath your feet is shaken. You feel like you're not on strong foundation. It shakes beneath your feet. وَزُلْزِلُوا حَتَّى يَقُولَ الرَّسُولُ وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مَعَهُ مَتَى نَصْرُ اللَّهِ. Until even those people who believed in Allah and even the messenger would say, when is the help of Allah coming? That it would be so much hardship that they were asking, when is the help of Allah coming? And Allah Azza wa Jal responds, or the messenger responds to his community of believers, أَلَا إِنَّ نَصْرَ اللَّهِ قَرِيبٌ. أَلَا إِنَّ نَصْرَ اللَّهِ قَرِيبٌ. Indeed, the help of Allah, the victory of Allah is near. The help of Allah is near. So part of the Islamic worldview that differs from that of someone who is not a believer is this understanding that the lapse of time may be different. Those who are looking at the world in haste, Mata Nasrullah, when is the help of Allah coming? It seems as though it's not coming. It seems as though it's not coming. But in the sight of Allah, in Allah's measurement of how the time is passing, and in Allah's measurement of the distance of the help of Allah from the believers, Allah says, Ala inna nasrallahi qareeb. The help of Allah is near. So one ought to kind of what's the word? Like when you do another equilibrium, I forget the word. It resets to give a different standard to your way of measuring the time, right? You set your equilibrium differently. You use a different standard, a different way to measure. Okay. I want to speak about a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. He says, يوشك أن تداعى عليكم الأمم كما تداعى الأكلة على قصعتها. That the time is coming near. He's speaking to his companions. The time is coming near where the different nations will call for you as those people who are eating, they call to the bowl of food. They call to the bowl of food. So the different nations will call one another in the same way that, imagine you're a host. Imagine you're a host at a dinner party. And you tell all of your guests, come to the food. Come to this platter that I have prepared for you. The Prophet ﷺ is saying the time is coming near when the different nations will call to you. You are on the platter. You are on the menu. They are calling to attack you as though you are that which is to be eaten. It's an incredible visual the Prophet ﷺ is drawing. قِيلَ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ أَمِنْ قِلَّةٍ بِنَا. Is it because of our lack of numbers on that day? Is it because there will come a day when we are so few that is happening? And the Prophet ﷺ will say, لا وَلَكِنَّكُمْ غُثَاءٌ كَغُثَاءِ السَّيْلِ. It is not the case that you are small in number, but rather you are plentiful. You are plentiful. But your numbers aren't quality numbers. He says, وَلَكِنَّكُمْ غُثَاءٌ كَغُثَاءِ السَّيْلِ. You know, when water, imagine like the ocean, you see the froth of the ocean, and you see the little things that the water, it carries. The Prophet ﷺ is saying, you are that which the ocean carries on top. You are that froth. You are that almost like that, the filth that is carried, that moves along. That is how you will be on that day. وَلَكِنَّكُمْ غُثَاءٌ كَغُثَاءِ السَّيْلِ. You are like that filth that the waves are crashing back and forth. تُنْزَعُ الْمَهَابَةُ مِنْ قُلُوبِ عَدُوِّكُمْ. The Prophet ﷺ, he says that the respect, the dignity, and the fear that other people, that your enemy has for you will be removed from their heart. Your enemy will not think of you in a very dignified manner. They will not have much respect for you. They don't consider you to have much standing. Allah Azza wa Jal will remove that feeling of dignity from the hearts of your enemies. وَيُوضَعُ فِي قُلُوبِكُمُ الْوَهَنِ. And what will be placed in your hearts, you Muslims, what will be placed in your hearts is al-wahan. Al-wahan. So the Sahaba, they asked the Prophet ﷺ, قالوا يا رسول الله وما الوهن. What is wahan? What is wahan? It means feebleness, it means weakness. But the Prophet ﷺ describes it even further, saying that this feebleness, this weakness will be put into your hearts. The companions, they ask, what is the nature of that? And he says, قال حب الدنيا وكراهية الموت. He says, this weakness that will be placed in your heart is the love of this world and the hate of the hereafter. The love of this world, being cemented to this world and hating the hereafter. There's an example that's mentioned of one of the khulafa where he brought forth a scholar or a hakim, someone who was a wise man, a person of knowledge. And he asked him, why is it the case that we hate to die so much? Why is it the case that we hate to die so much? And this Khalifa that was asking was actually during a time of thriving of the Muslim Empire. The Muslim Empire had a lot at that time. So this wise person, he told him, Ammartum dunyakum. Ammartum dunyakum. You have built your dunya. You have built this world. Wa kharrabtum akhiratakum. And you have destroyed your hereafter. You have destroyed your hereafter. فتكرهون الخروج من العمران إلى الخراب. So you hate to leave from that which you've built to that which you've destroyed. Why do you hate death? Because this is where you've built. This is the home you have furnished. And the hereafter is the home you haven't furnished. The hereafter is that home you haven't invested in. It has a bill. You know how you have a bill for your home? You have a light bill, you have a winter bill. It's all going to go up, right? And you got to pay that bill. You have to take care of it, or else it's not going to be well maintained. There are bills for your home in the hereafter. This salah that you pray is a bill that you have to pay for your hereafter. This taking care of your children, raising them with deen, is a bill that you pay for your hereafter. This care that you have for your brothers and sisters all across the world is a bill that you pay for your hereafter. There's maintenance that's required to keep up that home in the hereafter and to make it the palace that one would want to go to. But there's, subhanAllah, so much imagery in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and there's always lessons to draw optimism from, that we will be like that which is carried by the waves. That which is carried by the waves. So in that is that we are not the movers and the shakers of the world during that time. We are carried by other people. We are the object, or rather the object of their actions. We are not the ones who are the people of power. Rather than being the ones who carry things, we are those who are carried by other people. And we will crash on the waves. You know, things that are carried by the water, it crashes, right? Waves crash upon each other. And these crashes are those things that wake us up. You know, the waves, they come and they crash us. And that is a wake-up call. And wallahi, if the least thing that happens from all of the calamity that we are going through as Muslims is that we are waking up, then that enough, inshallah, is a victory in and of itself. If the least that comes from the calamities that we are going through is that Allah wakes us up in this world, then that is a victory. That is a form of the help of Allah coming. He has woken you up, because it is only after being awoken that you can make preparations. It is only after being awoken that you can act towards fixing your state. And sometimes, depending on the depth of our sleep, it requires more to get us to wake up. So it should make us think, really, why did it take something so big? How big was our sleep? How deep was our sleep that it took such incredible suffering of the ummah to get us to realize that, you know, wallahi, I have to be doing more. It's something that ought to make us reflect and ought to make us think, you know, this is a state of negligence that I never want to return to. That inshallah, Allah Azza wa Jal, He gives victory to the people of Gaza. Allah eases their suffering. Inshallah, there's support that comes there. And maybe there'll come a time where it won't be top of mind. But remember that from this time you realize, I will never allow myself to go into as deep of a sleep as I was before all of this was happening. So from the help of Allah and the victory of Allah is that Allah Azza wa Jal, He wakes us up from our state of sleep. Because every single one of us, we have a role to play. Every single one of us, we have a role to play. You cannot directly help your brothers and sisters abroad, right? But there is much that can be done now. There is much that can be done now. You correcting yourself and you correcting the state of your family may be a reason why Allah Azza wa Jal brings victory to the ummah. Brings victory to the ummah across borders and across seas and oceans, right? You taking the means to say, for the sake of Allah, I will rectify myself and I will rectify my family. So that when you raise your hands to make dua, that is a dua that is accepted. That is a dua that is coming from a sincere place. From the other lessons and ways in which the help of Allah comes is that it puts us in a position where all of our hope is upon Allah. All of our hope is upon Allah. Remember, the people were gathering against the believers, and people were trying to make them be fearful. Like, you should be fearful of the enemy that is coming. But it only increased them in faith. وَقَالُوا حَسْبُنَا اللَّهُ وَنِعْمَ الْوَكِيلُ. And they said, Allah is sufficient for us. Allah is sufficient for us. وَنِعْمَ الْوَكِيلُ. This is like an expression of like amazement, and how amazing Allah is as a caretaker of our affairs. Hasbunallah. Allah is enough for us, and how incredible of a caretaker He is of our affairs. So this waking up of the ummah and this realization of the ummah to put its trust and its reliance entirely on Allah, this wallahi is a type of victory. This is a type of nasr from Allah. That the ummah comes back. The ummah realizes its strength is not in the United Nations. Its strength is not in the leaders or so-called leaders that we have that lead our countries, the puppets and whoever they may be. Our reliance is not upon them. Our reliance is solely upon Allah Azza wa Jal. And Allah Azza wa Jal makes that abundantly clear. When He puts you in a position to realize the leaders of countries will not help you. The leaders that you thought were your allies will not help you. The people around you, the neighboring countries around you, they will not help you. These material resources that you have, they will not help you. What will help you is Allah Azza wa Jal. And it puts you in a position to really have that reality be as clear as day. One of the other victories in this kind of moment is that Allah Azza wa Jal gives us additional clarity, and He allows us to see people for who they are. He allows us to see people for who they are. Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, "ما كان الله ليذر المؤمنين على ما أنتم عليه حتى يميز الخبيث من الطيب." Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, it was not for Allah to leave the believers upon their state, upon their current state, until He differentiates the filth from the pure. Until He differentiates the filth from the pure. And how many people did we think they were good, upstanding people, and then a moment came for them to speak against genocide, and suddenly they were silent? Allah Azza wa Jal is exposing so many people who we thought were allies to us, exposing so many people who we thought were working to serve our interests, so many people who we considered our allies, so many people who wanted to project themselves as friends to the Muslim community, completely abandoning us. And to them we say, thank you very much. When you tell us who you are, we will believe you. When you show us who you are, we will believe you. Some of the people who they had really garnered a lot of attention from the Muslim community, people like Jordan Peterson, for example, on that very first day, subhanallah, on that very first moment, and he says to them, give them help, subhanallah. And now you see what's happening. And he was asked, I don't know how many people even follow this guy, so excuse me for the tangent, but he was asked, do you regret saying this? And he said, I only regret not putting it in a longer form. And he said, the moment I regretted it was realizing that I had a lot of Muslim followers that I lost. So Allah Azza wa Jal, He tells us actually that these kind of people, what they actually hide in their heart, they expose certain things about how they feel, but what they hide in their heart is actually much worse than what they expose. So this issue has proven to be like a litmus test in showing us where people stand. When people can witness this kind of atrocity being directed towards innocent children, to see entire villages, entire towns completely decimated to the ground, and still have the audacity to claim the moral high ground, like just complete absurdity, complete gaslighting. What like fake posturing of morality this is. But for all of that, we say thank you for showing us who you are. From the signs of the victory of Allah Azza wa Jal is all of the brothers and the sisters coming together in support for one another. What an incredible blessing. Imagine on the day of judgment, or you enter paradise, imagine meeting a brother or a sister from Gaza and telling them that, you know, across the world, in the middle of the night, I whisper to Allah I whisper to Allah to alleviate your suffering. And that whispering that happens, it only comes from Iman. That only comes from Iman. Allah putting us in a position where He increases our Iman, if that is not victory, if Allah putting us in a position where our Iman is increased, if that is not victory, nothing is victory. That is the heart of victory. To be put in a position where your Iman is increased. And all of that care, that whispering to Allah Azza wa Jal for the alleviation of suffering and harm from our brothers and sisters only comes because we recognize these are our real brothers and sisters. We care for them like we care for our families. That coming together, that is a victory in and of itself. Now, I want us to speak a little bit about putting everything in perspective. Putting everything in perspective. And part of doing that properly is to have husnul dhan billah, is to have a good impression of Allah, to be optimistic and to think positively about Allah, to know that Allah Azza wa Jal will always bring victory to the believers. But the way in which we conceive of husnul dhan billah, the way that we view what it means to have a proper impression of Allah, must be done in a proper way. Because if it's not done in a proper way, it can cause a crisis of faith. So I'll give you an example. If your husnul dhan billah, if your good impression of Allah is the assumption that Allah will bring victory immediately like this is in contrast to the sunnah of Allah. It's in contrast to the pattern of Allah in His creation. That is not how Allah brings about victory. So I want us to keep away from having a mistaken conception of what it means to be optimistic in this kind of situation. We ought to have a view of optimism that is tempered by an understanding of the realities that Allah Azza wa Jal talks about in the Quran. One in which we understand that Allah Azza wa Jal may bring about these little victories like the victories we were just talking about earlier. The brothers coming together, making dua for one another, coming to realizations about the nature of this world and so on. All of these are little victories along the way, right? So let us understand and anticipate victory in its proper way. Because if you anticipate victory coming in a certain form and you don't see that being delivered to you by Allah, that may cause a crisis of faith. So you ought to understand what the victory of Allah properly means. And part of the victory of Allah are some of these things that we spoke about earlier. But in addition to that, in having proper optimism, and in understanding the sunan of Allah, these patterns of Allah in His creation properly, is to understand that victory comes in stages. Victory comes in stages. And I'll read to you a quote and then inshallah we'll translate the quote. This is by Sheikh Ahmed al-Sayyid Hafidhahullah. He says, وَالنَّصْرُ الْجُزْءِ لَا يَسْتَلْزِمْ النَّصْرَ الْكُلِّ مُبَاشَرَةً. That Allah Azza wa Jal giving you some small partial victory does not necessitate that the immediate complete victory of Allah is coming immediately. وَلَا يَسْتَلْزِمْ انتفاء الآلام الشديدة. And it doesn't mean that suddenly all of these intense pains that people have will immediately disappear. فَنَصْرُ يَوْمِ بَدْرٍ غَيْرُ نَصْرِ فَتْحِ مَكَّةِ. Because the victory of Badr, this is very, very important. The victory of Badr was unlike the victory of the conquest of Mecca. Both were a victory, was it not? Both was a victory. The victory of the battle of Badr was unlike the victory of the conquest of Mecca. فَالْأَوَّلْ نَصْرُ الْبِدَايَاتِ وَالثَّانِي نَصْرُ التَّمْكِينِ. Because the first is the victory of the beginning. It is almost like an infantile. It is an introductory victory. While that second victory that's mentioned, the conquest of Mecca, is Allah Azza wa Jal giving you control, giving you that like almost final sense of victory. فَيَوْمُ بَدْرٍ أَعْقَبَهُ إِنْكِسَارُ أُحُدٍ. And remember that after Badr was a victory. We just refer to Badr as a victory. But the victory of Badr was followed by the defeat of Uhud. Remember in the battle of Uhud, when the archers, they left their position and then they were seized from behind by the army of Khalid ibn al-Walid before he became Muslim, right? There was a defeat there. There was a breaking of the Muslimin in that state. So there was victory, but it was followed by difficulty. ثم فيوم بدر أعقبه انكسار أحد ثم حصار الأحزاب ثم ألم الحديبية ثم في النهاية جاء فتح مكة. Then there was the battle of Al-Ahzab. Then there was the disappointment at Hudaybiyah. You remember at Hudaybiyah when they thought they were going to be able to perform Umrah, and they had to turn back. And it was such a state of defeat that the Muslims experienced at that time. But that was followed after an introductory victory that they had at one point. So there are these ups and downs in the sunnah of Allah. This is the pattern of Allah. And after that defeat came the Fath of Mecca, came the conquest of Mecca. So this is the pattern of Allah in His creation. ثم في النهاية جاء فتح مكة وَدَخَلَ النَّاسُ فِي دِينِ اللَّهِ أَفْوَاجًا. And after the conquest of Mecca, the people came into the religion in droves. وَكَانَ ذَلِكَ كُلُّهُ مَسْبُوقًا بِالصَّبْرِ الطَّوِيلِ فِي مَكَّةِ على الابتلاءات التي زكى الله بها نفوسهم وثبت بها عقيدتهم. And remember that even all of that we mentioned, all of that, Badr, Uhud, Hudaybiyah, Ahzab, the Fath of Mecca, all of that came after much suffering in Mecca before even the whole Hijrah. All of which they were exercising incredible patience that was purifying them of their sins and was reinforcing their aqeedah, that was reinforcing their belief in Allah Azza wa Jal. So it's important for us to remember this, that victory, it comes in stages. That even if there's an introductory victory, there may be losses that follow that until an ultimate victory comes. But Allah Azza wa Jal does not allow the believers to be losers in the end. Allah Azza wa Jal does not allow the believers to be losers in the end. And even those people that you see in positions of power, Allah has them taste punishment in this world before the hereafter. Whether it be psychological issues, whether it be losses of their family, or whatever it may be. يَأْلَمُونَ كَمَا تَأْلَمُونَ. They go through pain, they experience pain just as you will experience pain as well. So with all of this, I know that emotions are heightened. Emotions are heightened. You see the loss of life, the loss of innocent life. And a lot of times one cannot help but feel rage, but feel very, very angry, very frustrated with the situation that they feel. But all of that, that impulse must be channeled into action. Must be channeled into action. And the actions that are for us to take is to have husnul dhan billah, to have a good impression of Allah. And like we said, that good impression of Allah must be tempered by the reality that we see from the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ and the many examples that he explains in the Quran. Then comes, like we mentioned before, rectifying ourselves, leaving off sins, performing our obligations, and taking care of our families. وَأْمُرْ أَهْلَكَ بِالصَّلَاةِ وَاصْطَبِرْ عَلَيْهَا. You command your family to pray. Allah commands the Prophet ﷺ, and you yourself be patient over it. This understanding that I have myself in my control and I have my family in my control. I'm responsible for them. If I can get this right, and if everyone gets that right, victory is very close. Victory is very close. And the last thing that I'll end on is the importance of dua. Any single person that ever makes you feel like dua is some kind of petty thing, that dua is some kind of insignificant thing, they are wildly mistaken. They are wildly mistaken. Because a person who calls upon Allah brings together all kinds of servitude towards Allah that is pleasing to Him. It is the complete surrender of the heart to Allah. It is the complete affirmation and acknowledgement that this situation will change only when Allah Azza wa Jal provides change. Only when Allah Azza wa Jal provides relief, that is the only time it will change. So catch yourselves before you say All we have is dua in some kind of like almost like demeaning way. All you have is dua. You have a line to Allah, the King of the world. If someone said you have a phone call to Biden right now, you have his ear for like 30 seconds, you can tell him how you feel about this and that and this and that. You'd be like, wow, that's what an incredible opportunity. Take advantage of that. Allah Azza wa Jal will listen to you. Allah, the King of the world, the King of the worlds, the King of Biden and the United Nations and the entirety of the universe will listen to you. Will listen to you when you call upon Him. And perhaps will use you and will make your dua the reason why He brings victory to the Muslims. So I always like to make sure that we do not end these things on a sad note. Wallahi, the ummah of Muhammad will always be successful. And success, it is constantly coming. Success comes with the shahada that we had before Jummah. Success comes in the shabab coming back to their deen. Success comes in someone waking up and realizing, I need to establish my prayers. Success comes when a person realizes that this job is haram income, I should leave it. Success comes when a person realizes, I need to have a stronger relationship with my family. All of these kinds of things, Allah Azza wa Jal is constantly giving us success after success after success. And so when we experience these pains, we know that inna ma'al usri yusra. Inna ma'al usri yusra. With difficulty comes ease. With difficulty comes ease. هذا والله أعلم وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. Any questions, comments, observations? Brother Farhan. Yeah. That's excellent. So through Hudaybiyah, that time of peace, it brought about a time of peace that actually led to an incredible flourishing of Islam during that time period. And even some of the conditions that they had posed, they themselves relinquished those conditions because they were proving to be harmful to them. One of the people that they would not release ended up being someone who would later raid the caravans of the Quraysh, until eventually he was causing too much trouble. So they were like, all right, you can have him. So in the end, it brought about victory to the believers. It brought about people being able to accept Islam in a greater number. And even during that time, the men weren't able to come, but the fine print was that it was only men that were prevented from coming. The women could still come. The woman could still come and give bay'ah to the Prophet ﷺ and come to Medina. Yeah. How old would the men start the war? I don't know about a particular age, but ages back then differ a lot from ages currently, right? When you don't have the kinds of milestones their milestones were different. Once you're able-bodied enough to start working, you start working, right? Once you start working and have an income, you get married. Like their perception of how people ought to move through life was kind of marked by different milestones. So because of that, people also were treated with a lot more maturity very early on. So if you want people to grow into more mature individuals, then you start treating them as more mature, even though they seem young to you, right? So if you treat people like they're adolescents the entirety of their life, you'll find that you have adults that behave like adolescents, right? You have people that are adults with beards, or I'm sorry, rather children. They're children with beards. They've physically matured, but they haven't matured in the most important ways. But there are some stories about how there were some really like young kids that were very eager to join the battle, but they were like prevented because of their age. And so one of them said, "Oh, but I'm a really good shot. I am really good with the bow and arrow." So the Prophet ﷺ allowed him to join. And then the one who wasn't as good of a shot, he was a really good wrestler. So he made a point that I can pin down this guy who's a really good shot. So I believe he was allowed to join as well. So there was that like excitement that they had to participate and do what they could. The conclusion of who? Which war? One more time? I don't understand. Badr? What was the conclusion of Badr? Badr was a victory. Badr was a decisive victory for the believers, where even after they were defeated at Uhud, Abu Sufyan, who was a Muslim at the time, he said that this is for that defeat that we had earlier. So Badr was a victory, but like we said, it was like an introductory, preliminary victory. Khair, inshallah, I hope food is ready downstairs. جزاكم الله خيرا. هذا والله أعلم وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد.